I turned 35 and threw myself a party. Nothing extravagant. Just a backyard setup with string lights, homemade food, a Spotify playlist I spent 2 hours curating. I even baked the cake myself. Chocolate with raspberry buttercream. My favorite. I sent invites 3 weeks in advance. Mom said she'd check her schedule. Ava, my sister, left it on read. Dad didn't reply at all, but I figured they'd show. I was always the one who remembered their birthdays, who sent flowers, who booked restaurants and wrote heartfelt cards. Surely they'd come. By 7 p.m., the candles on the table had melted to stumps. By 8 o'clock, the guacamole had turned gray. By 9 o'clock, I turned off the music and packed everything into Tupperware. No one came. Not one text. Not one excuse. Not one single call to say, I'm sorry. 5 days later, I got a group text from my mom. We're organizing Dad's 60th. A week in the Keys. $2,800 per person. Venmo me. No hello. No happy birthday I missed. No acknowledgement that they had ignored me entirely. Just a bill. I stared at the message for a long time, the words blurry from the rage tightening in my chest. And then I did the only thing that felt right. I sent her $2 with a note, congratulations. Then I went to the door, changed the locks, and blocked every number in my phone tied to blood. 3 days later, Ava tried to access the joint emergency fund, the one I had contributed to month after month. Well, they called me selfish and said I never really pitched in. Blocked. And just when I thought they'd finally leave me alone, the police showed up at my door. Ma'am, we received a report that you've been missing. Family said they're concerned for your safety. My name is Delilah Quinn, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because when the people who never show up for you start screaming when you disappear, it's not because they care. It's because you took the oxygen they were quietly stealing and learned to breathe without them. When I was 8, my sister Ava got a brand new bike for her birthday. Pink, with a sparkly seat and white tassels on the handlebars. She didn't even ask for it. Just woke up to it on the porch, shiny and perfect. That same year, I got a second-hand set of colored pencils for mine. Half of them already used, most of them broken. Mom smiled when I opened them. You're the creative one, she said. Ava's more into sports. And that was the beginning. Ava was celebrated. I was functional. She got praise, attention, extra dessert. I got told I was so mature for my age, which in our house was just code for we expect you to understand things that hurt. By high school, Ava was skipping classes and hosting sleepovers that left the kitchen trashed. I was holding straight as and washing dishes without being asked. When she crashed Dad's car, they blamed the rain. When I missed curfew by 10 minutes because of a late bus, I was grounded for a week. Still, I kept showing up. Every holiday, every family dinner, every birthday, armed with gifts and patience and just enough hope that maybe this time they'd treat me like I mattered. Instead, I got used to hearing the same phrases on loop. Don't take it personally. She's just going through a phase. You'll understand someday. But someday never came. At 28, I loaned Ava $5,000 to get her through a rough patch. I never saw it again. At 31, I took care of Mom after her surgery. Changed bandages, cleaned the house, handled insurance paperwork. Ava came by once, for 20 minutes. Left with a selfie and a story to tell her friends about how emotionally draining caregiving is. Still, they thanked her first in the group text. And me? You've always been the reliable one. Like that was love. When I planned my 35th birthday party, I knew better than to expect anything extravagant. But I thought maybe they'd show up. Turns out, I was still waiting to be seen by people who had made an art out of pretending I wasn't standing right in front of them. That night, after no one came, I sat on my porch staring at the flickering candles, and the only thing I could think was, how many more years will I waste hoping this time is different? I didn't know it yet, but I had already asked my last question of them. The next one would come in the form of silence, and that would be my first real answer. The day after I sent my mom $2 with the message, congratulations, I sat on my living room floor and opened every single drawer they'd ever had a key to, metaphorically and literally. The front door? Lock changed. The spare key I'd hidden under the flower pot for emergencies? Tossed. The shared streaming account that they used but never contributed to? Cancelled. The family group chat that only pinged me when someone needed help moving, borrowing money, or crying about their drama. I left it without a word. I went down the list and blocked every single number tied to my bloodline. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. It wasn't about deleting people. It was about removing access to me. My peace, my time, my energy. Things they had taken freely without ever asking if I had enough for myself. That day, I opened my freezer and stared at the leftover birthday cake I had wrapped in foil. Still untouched. I took a bite. Cold. Sweet. Dense with sugar and a quiet kind of grief. Then I threw it in the trash. There was no ceremony. No sad music playing in the background. Just the sound of a plastic lid closing. Final. After that, I logged into the joint emergency savings account. The one they'd all agreed was for family stuff, but which in reality meant I deposited $250 every month while Ava pulled money out for spontaneous spa trips and Dad used it to pay for his fantasy football bets. I had funded 90% of it. I froze it. I didn't drain it. I didn't steal. I just made it so no one could touch it, not without me present. 3 days later, Ava tried to withdraw $800. Declined. That was when the text started. First from her. Hey, I think something's wrong with the bank. Then from Mom. Did you change something with the joint account? Then again from Ava, this time more direct. Why are you being petty? It's not that deep. I stared at that last message for a long time. Not that deep? They hadn't shown up to my birthday. Hadn't texted, called, or acknowledged me. Had sent me a bill instead of sorry. But I was the petty one. I didn't reply. That was the day I turned my phone off for good. I told my clients they could reach me by email only. I logged out of social media. Deleted my photos from our shared iCloud folder. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Because the truth was I hadn't disappeared. I just finally stopped giving them a front row seat to the life they never clapped for. And that silence, it wasn't passive. It was power. Ava tried calling 6 times in one day. I didn't answer. She left one voicemail, her voice sweet and fake and just tight enough to let me know she was angry, but trying to sound concerned. Hey, Del, just checking in. Not sure what's going on with the joint account, but I'm assuming it's a glitch. Let's talk soon, okay? I didn't call back. I didn't explain. Because here's what they never understood. I was never asking for attention. I was asking for respect. And when you stop giving people your labor, your money, your energy, your emotional first aid kit, they don't grieve the relationship. They grieve the loss of your usefulness. I saw it play out like a movie. First confusion, then concern, then irritation, then full-blown meltdown. By the end of the week, my mom had emailed me. We're family. We don't freeze each other out like this. I almost laughed. They didn't freeze me out? They skipped my 35th birthday like it was nothing. Sent me a bill 5 days later. Didn't send one message to ask if I was okay. But now that the ATM was offline, now we're family? I left the email unanswered. And that's when they did the most dramatic thing of all. They filed a missing person report. It's almost impressive, in a way, the leap they made from you're dramatic to you've disappeared. 3 days after I blocked everyone, 2 uniformed officers showed up at my door. I opened it in pajamas, holding a cup of tea. Ms. Quinn, we received a report from your family that you might be missing. They said you've been unreachable, and they're worried. I blinked. I'm not missing, I said. I just stopped answering people who hurt me. They looked at each other, like they weren't sure what to do with that. I invited them in. Showed them the birthday photos, candles lit, food untouched. Showed them the text asking for $2,800. The blocked calls. The Venmo message. The receipts. One of the officers actually sighed. Honestly, seems like they just didn't like you going no contact. I nodded. They apologized for the inconvenience and left. And that night, I posted a photo of myself, hair wrapped in a towel, book in my lap, mug in hand. Caption, not missing, just unavailable. No names, no drama, no hashtags, but I know they saw it Because silence may be invisible, but its weight? It's unforgettable. After the police left, I sat in complete silence. Not the awkward kind. Not the kind that makes your skin itch with loneliness. This silence felt earned. Like peace that had been waiting its turn for years. The officers had left with their little notepad and polite nods. They hadn't treated me like a threat. Just another adult who decided to set boundaries, which, imagine that, is not a crime. Still, I couldn't shake the absurdity. They reported me missing. No calls on my birthday. No knock on my door the day after. But the second I stopped being useful, I was suddenly lost. It wasn't concern. It was control dressed up in panic. The only thing missing was their ability to reach me. And that I was not returning. That same night, Ava posted on her Instagram story, not directly about me, but I know shade when I see it. Some people disappear and think it makes them mysterious, but mostly it makes them selfish. A beach selfie followed. Caption, #family first. Funny how the people who preach family first are always the ones who think that means you come last. I didn't reply, didn't screenshot, didn't even care, because I had my own version of reality, and for the first time, I wasn't editing it for someone else's comfort. Instead, I went to therapy. I started with 1 session a week, then 2. I unpacked things I hadn't said aloud in years. How I always felt like a guest in my own family, how being good meant being quiet, how Ava could ruin a birthday and still be the one they bought a gift for. My therapist looked at me after one particularly hard session and said, "You weren't difficult. You were just honest in a family that preferred denial." That sentence stayed with me. I started writing it on sticky notes and putting them on my fridge, my mirror, my laptop. It became my anthem. I wasn't missing. I was done. Done begging for crumbs. Done interpreting silence as something I had to fix. Done playing the reliable daughter while they took until I disappeared into the background. And here's the best part. The more they panicked, the calmer I became. Because I realized the only thing they missed was the version of me they could guilt into staying. Now that she was gone, they had nothing left to manipulate. Just their own echo. Without me, they started slipping. Quietly, then all at once. I didn't see it firsthand, of course. I wasn't there, but word got around. People talk, especially when the person they used to lean on suddenly goes silent. It started with Ava. She tried to book the $2,800 birthday trip without consulting anyone. My mother assumed I'd be contributing as always. When I didn't, they were short. Hotels got downgraded. The surprise yacht dinner became a lakeside rental with boxed wine and plastic cutlery. The cracks were subtle at first. Small jabs, muttered complaints. But I wasn't there to mediate. And that's when the blaming started. Ava accused Mom of managing everything poorly. Mom snapped back, said Ava was just like her father. Dad, the quiet coward he always was, walked out halfway through dinner and didn't return till midnight. I heard all this from a distant cousin who called me out of nowhere. "Delilah, are you okay? It's a mess over here without you." That one sentence did something I didn't expect. It didn't make me feel guilty. It made me feel seen. Because all those years I was called dramatic, selfish, overreactive. The truth was, I'd been holding the whole damn house together with quiet sacrifices. And now that I'd stopped, the weight fell exactly where it belonged. They tried to act like I was invisible, replaceable. But when the glue disappears, things don't bend. They break. Meanwhile, I started breathing again. Real breathing. Deep in the lungs, into the belly, no tightness in my chest kind of breathing. I went to therapy twice a week. Started writing again. Took long walks at sunset. Phone on Do Not Disturb, not because I was avoiding anyone, but because no one left was worth answering. I launched a small design business from my guest room. Named it after a phrase my grandmother used to say, "Build soft, live loud." Clients started pouring in. Reviews were kind. Payments came on time. And best of all, no one in my inbox was asking me to fix a family mess I didn't make. I laughed more. I slept deeper. I remembered what my actual laugh sounded like, not the one I used to soften the room, the one I weaponized to keep peace. This one was real. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone an explanation for my joy. I wasn't missing from their world. They had just never imagined a version of me where I stopped asking for scraps and started building banquets. I was still here, still alive, still thriving, just no longer available to hold up a collapsing house I didn't set on fire. It was a Wednesday night when I wrote the letter. No dramatic music playing. No thunderstorm in the background. Just me, barefoot in sweatpants, glass of wine on the table, and an ache in my chest I hadn't fully named yet. I didn't plan to write it. It just came out like a purge, like something waiting behind my ribs for too long. The first line was simple. This is everything I never said out loud. Then came the flood. I wrote about the birthday party no one showed up for, about sitting at that table alone while the candles burned down and the cake went untouched, about waiting, still waiting for someone to text, "I'm sorry." I wrote about Ava, how I used to envy her, not for the attention, but for how easily love was given to her, how she never had to ask for softness, how even when she hurt people, someone swept in to protect her. Meanwhile, I was the one sweeping. I wrote about my mom, how her silence always cut louder than words, how her coldness trained me to think that withholding affection was normal, that love had to be earned by being useful. I wrote about my dad, how he watched all of it and said nothing, and how silence from a father feels like being erased in slow motion. And then I wrote about myself, the version of me they thought they knew, the strong one, the quiet one, the one who never needed anything, the one who handled it. And how all that strength they praised, it was survival, not choice. I told them I forgave them, but not for them, for me. Because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't letting someone off the hook. It's realizing you don't have to carry the weight anymore. When I finished, the letter was 5 pages long, my handwriting a little shaky, the ink smudged in a few places. I folded it, didn't read it back, didn't proofread, didn't pause to decide if it made sense. Then I walked outside to backyard, lit a small fire in the pit, and dropped the pages in one by one. They curled at the corners, blackened, disappeared into ash. I watched every word burn. And the strange thing? I didn't cry. Not once. I just felt lighter. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't closure in the dramatic, shouted in their face kind of way. It was release. The kind of peace that only comes when you stop trying to get people to understand you, and instead, understand yourself. I finished my wine in silence, went back inside, brushed my teeth, slept with no dreams. That letter? They never got it, and they never needed to, because it wasn't for them. It was for the girl inside me who sat through 100 dinners where no one looked her in the eye. The girl who spent years wondering, what did I do wrong? The girl who finally knew. She wasn't broken. She was just surrounded by people who benefited from her silence, until she stopped being quiet. The morning of my 36th birthday, I woke up to the smell of cinnamon and coffee. Sunlight poured through the sheer curtains, warm and gold. In the kitchen, laughter bounced off the walls. My best friend, Mariah, was humming some old Whitney Houston track while making French toast. There were tulips in a vase I didn't remember placing there. It was soft, quiet, real, and it was mine, not a grand hotel, not a $2,800 island trip with fake smiles and matching polo shirts. Just joy that didn't need a price tag. At the table were people who showed up, not for optics, not for obligation, but because they loved me in the steady, sacred way I used to beg for from my family. Mariah, my coworker Jenna, and her wife. Isaac, my neighbor, who brought a bottle of wine and a loaf of banana bread with happy birthday carved into the top in chocolate chips. We ate, passed plates, made dumb jokes, and nobody checked their phone mid-conversation. At one point, someone said, "Delilah, you've got the calmest energy I've ever felt." And I smiled, because calm didn't used to be my story. I used to be tension wrapped in skin. The fixer, the good daughter, the second option. I used to wake up every birthday, wondering if they'd remember. If maybe this year, the cake wouldn't feel like an apology for something I didn't do. Now, I didn't wonder anymore, because I wasn't waiting for anyone to see me. I saw myself. After brunch, I curled up by the window with my journal. Not to vent, not to explain, just to remember. I wrote one sentence at the top of the page. They thought I disappeared, But really, I just stopped showing up for people who never showed up for me. That wasn't bitterness. It wasn't even sadness. It was truth. And truth is heavier than grief. But it holds you more honestly. They had told the world I was missing, painted me as unwell, unstable, distant. But I wasn't missing. I was unavailable to manipulation, to guilt, to being used up like a spare battery in the junk drawer. What they missed wasn't me. It was the version of me that absorbed their chaos, paid the bills they forgot, showed up to parties I wasn't invited to, and clapped for people who never clapped back. They missed their free labor. They missed their scapegoat. They missed the glue. But me? I didn't miss them. Because what I've learned is that peace isn't something you earn by being small enough to fit into other people's comfort zones. Peace is something you claim and protect and build walls around when necessary. That night, I lit one candle for myself. No cake, no singing, just me on my balcony under the stars, wrapped in a blanket of my own making. And as I watched the flame flicker, I whispered to no one, "Happy birthday, Delilah. You made it. Not just to 36, but to the other side."
I stood in the kitchen with a stack of ivory-colored envelopes in my hands, hand-tied with twine, each one sealed with pressed lavender and a wax stamp. They weren't mass-produced. They weren't glamorous. But they were us. I was proud of them. Mom wasn't. She turned the envelope over in her hand like it was a bill she didn't remember signing up for. "A backyard wedding?" she said, already curling her lip. "Claire, come on. That's for poor people." I blinked. "It's going to be beautiful. Intimate. Just 50 people. Lanterns in the trees. Live acoustic music. Handmade florals." She cut me off with a sharp laugh. "I'm embarrassed for you." I said nothing. My brother, James, chimed in a few days later. "No open bar? And who caters barbecue at a wedding?" My sister, Brooke, followed with, "You should have waited until Noah could at least afford a tux that fits." Each RSVP came in as a decline. Some didn't bother replying. No one offered help. No one asked how I was feeling. They didn't want to come because they didn't think it was worthy of being seen. So I stopped inviting them to see me. On the day of the wedding, I stood barefoot in the grass behind the little craftsman-style home Noah and I had worked 2 jobs to buy. The sun hit the canopy at just the right angle, and hundreds of fairy lights blinked gently in the breeze. The flowers were hand-picked by my friends. My dress was vintage. Our vows, handwritten and tear-soaked, were spoken through shaky breaths and full hearts. And it was perfect. Our best friend, Maya, filmed the entire thing on her DSLR. She worked in media and had offered to shoot and edit a video as a gift. We said yes, not expecting anything beyond a beautiful memory. 2 weeks later, she called me. "Claire, your video. It's going viral." I laughed. "What does that mean?" She sent a link. 12 million views. Comments flooded in from around the world. "I've never cried so hard watching strangers get married. This is what love is supposed to feel like. Forget luxury venues. This is dream wedding energy." They shared our vows, quoted Noah's speech, memed my dad's old guitar strumming as I walked down the aisle. And just like that, the same family who wouldn't come because it wasn't held in a ballroom, they were suddenly calling, messaging, asking to meet that amazing husband of yours. But I remembered what they said. I remembered what they didn't say. "My name is Claire Bennett, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me," because they skipped the vows. But they showed up when the applause started. Growing up in my family felt like living on a stage where the performance never ended. Everything was about presentation. My mom had a walk-in closet dedicated to just handbags, not one of them under $800. My dad collected watches he never wore. Sunday brunch wasn't a meal, it was a photo opportunity. And me? I was the bright one. The one who got into Columbia, the one they could parade around like proof they'd done something right. But it came at a price. I learned early on that appearances weren't just encouraged, they were required. Straight hair, polished nails, perfect posture, and most of all, the right kind of people around me. When I met Noah, he didn't fit their script. He wasn't flashy. He didn't come from a legacy family or have a summer home in the Hamptons. He was a public school teacher, 4th grade, math and reading. Quiet. Thoughtful. The kind of man who remembered birthdays, stopped to help elderly neighbors with groceries, and listened without ever interrupting. He grew up in foster care. Moved through 5 different homes by the time he was 16. The first time he told me that, I remember thinking, how is someone with that much history still so gentle? I fell in love with his soul. My family couldn't see past a salary. My mom's first comment after meeting him was, "He's sweet, but not your match." My brother asked if he even had a retirement plan. My sister whispered, "At least he's cute, right?" Every dinner with them became a tightrope walk. I tried to bridge the gap. Bought Noah collared shirts he didn't need. Prepped him on which fork to use when dining with my mom. Told him to just nod along when my dad talked about real estate. I played the peacemaker, the buffer, the translator, because a small, naive part of me believed they would change. That if they just saw how much Noah loved me, how steady he made me feel, how real our connection was, they'd soften. They didn't. And when I told them we wanted a backyard wedding, that tiny hope crumbled completely. Their rejection wasn't about the grass or the fairy lights. It was about control, about punishment, about saying, "You didn't choose who we would have picked, so we won't show up for who you've become." But here's the twist. When they walked away, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. For the first time, I wasn't arranging flowers around someone else's ego. I wasn't shrinking to make room at a table I was never welcome at to begin with. I was planning a wedding that reflected me. Simple, joyful, honest. And when I looked at Noah, the man they couldn't accept, I realized I'd finally stopped performing. They didn't come to our wedding, but neither did their expectations. And that, I now know, was the real gift. 3 weeks before the wedding, my mom called me, not to ask how planning was going, not to check in about the dress or the menu or my nerves. She called to negotiate. "Claire," she said, using that tone reserved for interventions and holiday fake smiles, "why don't you just wait a little longer? Find a real venue. Something elegant. Something people won't whisper about." I swallowed hard. People are whispering? She didn't answer directly, just sighed. "You don't want your wedding to look like a barbecue, do you?" That was her way of saying she was embarrassed again. I hung up without fighting. There was no point. That same week, my brother James made a joke during a family dinner I didn't attend. My friend Megan was there. Her sister's married into my family, so she heard it firsthand. He raised a glass and said, "Well, Claire's off to marry her teacher boyfriend in a backyard ceremony with lemonade in mason jars. What a Pinterest dream." Everyone laughed, except Megan. She told me, voice quiet, "I don't think they understand what they're doing to you." But I did. They were showing their true colors, not in rage, but in mockery. Then came the text. A cousin, probably trying to be funny, forwarded me screenshots from the family group chat I hadn't even known I was removed from. My sister Brooke had posted a picture of Noah from one of our suit fittings. He was standing in front of a thrift store mirror, trying on a gently used beige blazer. The caption read, "Teacher chic. Bet he throws in math lessons during the vows." Another message said, "I give it a year, maybe 2, if she keeps the lights dim." My heart didn't break. It hardened. Because that's when it hit me. They weren't disappointed in my wedding. They were never proud of me to begin with. They loved the version of me who got into Columbia, who interned at Vogue, who dated bankers. They clapped when I looked like someone they could show off. But real love isn't conditional. And they had shown me, over and over, that I was only as good as the image I gave them. So I stopped giving them updates. No more shared Pinterest boards. No more dress photos. No more texts about the playlist or floral colors or vows. I leaned into my joy like it was sacred. Noah and I built our archway out of reclaimed wood. We picked sunflowers together. We hung cafe lights on a Saturday morning with paint still under our fingernails. We laughed. We planned. We danced in the backyard barefoot to test the space. And for the first time, I stopped performing and started living. Their silence stopped hurting, because it had finally made space for my own voice. It started as a casual offer over coffee and banana bread. Maya, one of my closest friends from college, sipped her latte and said, "If you want, I can film the wedding for you. No charge." I blinked. "Are you serious?" She shrugged. "I've done 20 weddings this year. Yours deserves the same magic." Maya was the videographer behind half the luxury weddings featured on national blogs. Her work had been reposted by bridal magazines, design houses, even Vogue weddings once. Drone shots, cinematic editing, tear-jerking soundtracks. She had a gift for making moments look timeless. I almost refused. But then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Claire, this love deserves to be seen. Not by the people who didn't show up, but by the people who needed to." So we said yes. And what she created wasn't just a wedding video. It was a love letter. The day of the ceremony, Maya and her 2 assistants worked quietly, respectfully, like butterflies around the edges of every moment. Noah didn't even notice half the time. He was too focused on tying his own tie, too caught up in the way I looked walking barefoot across the lawn. Maya captured it all. The first look under the oak tree. The way my hands trembled when I read my vows. The way Noah kissed my knuckles before slipping on the ring. The speech from my best friend. The dancing under fairy lights. The fireflies joining in. Even our dog, Jasper, running across the yard with a flower crown like he was born to be ring bearer. But what made it brilliant was what Maya added after. She recorded quiet interviews the next day, me, Noah, our friends, just talking about what love meant to us. She overlaid our voices on top of the footage. We didn't want perfect. We wanted real. We chose meaning over marble floors. This is what building love looks like. When she showed me the final cut 2 weeks later, I cried so hard I had to pause the video halfway through. It was everything I wanted our wedding to be, and proof that it was. I thanked her with my whole heart. Then, that night, alone in bed while Noah read beside me, I quietly opened my laptop. I went to a popular wedding blog, one of those dreamy ones that mostly feature designer gowns and oceanfront venues. And I submitted it. No expectations. No announcement. Not even to Noah. Because this wasn't about showing off. It was about something else entirely. Letting our truth speak louder than their silence. I hit send, closed the laptop, and fell asleep beside the man everyone thought I was settling for. Little did they know, I had just handed the world a front row seat to the thing they never bothered to witness. I was folding laundry on a rainy Wednesday when my phone buzzed once, then again, then 27 more times. By the time I reached it, the screen was filled with notifications. Mentions. Tags. Messages. Shares. My heart jumped. I opened the first one. It was from Maya. "Check this out. We're live." She attached a link to the wedding blog, the one I had submitted to without telling a soul. There, on the homepage, front and center. "This backyard wedding will make you rethink luxury. Raw. Real. Radiant. This couple's vows will undo you." I clicked play. The video started with a drone shot of our yard. The arch Noah built from reclaimed wood. The soft white petals lining the aisle. The golden hour glow draped over every corner. Then our voices layered in. My whispered vows. Noah's tear-choked promises. The laughter from our friends. The clinking of glasses. The sound of genuine joy. And it spread like wildfire. By dinner, it had 200,000 views. By the time I woke up the next morning, 12 million. I scrolled through the comments, stunned. Crying in my cubicle. This is what love looks like. He's a teacher. This man is more valuable than 1,000 CEOs. She's so grounded and graceful. This is what real elegance is. Forget hotel ballrooms. This is how I want to get married. Noah, completely unaware, walked into the kitchen still wearing his pajama pants, pouring cereal into a coffee mug like he always did. I turned the screen toward him. He blinked. "Wait, is that us?" I nodded, biting back a smile. We kind of went viral. He stared at the view count, the flood of messages, the headlines. And then he smiled, not the smug kind but the soft kind. The one that said, "You did this. And I'm just proud to stand beside you." Within 48 hours, We were contacted by 2 TV producers, 3 magazines, and a florist brand offering a sponsorship deal. My tiny floral DIY page, where I used to post tips for backyard brides, quadrupled in followers. Orders began piling up from all over the country. People wanted to know who we were, how we met, why we chose to do it differently. But you know who didn't say anything? My family. No calls. No texts. No, wow, Claire, you looked stunning. Nothing. The silence now didn't sting the way it used to, because the world had finally seen the thing they never bothered to look for, the real me. The me who chose love over show. The me who bloomed without permission. And Noah? Noah was being called Husband of the Year by strangers online. They praised his vows, his eyes, his kindness. I knew they were right. I always had. It just felt good knowing now the entire world did too. It started with a text from my mother. Just 3 words. We should talk. A minute later, another message followed. Your wedding video made me cry. I didn't know it would be so powerful. So powerful. That's what did it. Not the vows, not the commitment, not the love she could have witnessed in real time, but the views. I stared at the screen, letting the message sit there unread. Then the voice notes started coming in. First from James, my brother, who once joked about our mason jars. Hey, so I just saw the video. Wow. Noah's amazing, huh? We were kinda wrong about him. Anyway, think we could maybe grab coffee sometime? Then from Brooke. I watched the part where he cried reading his vows and, yeah, that hit me. He really loves you, Claire. I'd love to finally meet him. As if now they were ready to show up, now that millions of strangers had already stood and clapped. My phone pinged again. Instagram notifications this time. My cousin, the same one who forwarded me the group chat full of mocking texts, had reposted our wedding video with a caption. My cousin Claire had the most beautiful wedding. So proud to be family 2 heart sparkles #goals. Funny. She didn't mention skipping it. Then my aunt uploaded a throwback photo of me at age 7, writing. She always had style. So proud of who she's become. Noah is a gem. Except she hadn't even RSVP'd. And just like that, my wedding had become their status symbol. Not because they'd changed. Not because they regretted missing it. But because everyone else was watching now, and they didn't want to be left out of the spotlight. They weren't reaching for connection. They were reaching for clout. It would have been easy to block them. To post a call-out thread. To respond with venom or a carefully written caption about those who didn't support me when it mattered. But I didn't. I didn't respond at all. I let their messages sit there, unread. I let their social media reposts hang in the air like glitter they couldn't sweep back up. Because what they didn't realize was that I had already mourned the version of family I thought they could be. And now I didn't need their approval. I had the truth. I had love that didn't require translation or permission. And I had proof that the people who skipped the moment would always try to rewrite the memory when applause came after. But some doors, once closed, don't need to be slammed. They just stay shut. Quiet. Firm. Final. 3 months after the wedding video went viral, I launched my first workshop, Wild Blooms for Real Brides. It was a cozy 2-day class for women planning weddings on tight budgets, single moms, full-time students, couples with more heart than savings. I taught them how to build centerpieces from grocery store blooms, how to wrap bouquets with fabric from an old dress shirt, how to make beauty out of what's already in your hands. The workshop sold out in 48 hours. A local venue offered their garden space for free after seeing the video. A sponsor donated supplies. And on the morning of the workshop, when I saw those women show up with notebooks and nervous smiles, I knew this is what I was meant to do. While I arranged daisies and eucalyptus on a picnic table, Noah was halfway across the city mentoring kids at a nonprofit for foster youth. His story, from group homes to classrooms to national recognition, had struck a nerve online. Now, they called him Coach Noah. He met weekly with young boys who needed someone to remind them that quiet men could still be powerful. We were both blooming in our own way. Not for cameras, not for applause, but because we had planted seeds with love, and love had given back. Then came the magazine. A mid-tier lifestyle publication reached out, asking to feature us in a piece titled, Love Without Labels, Couples Who Rewrote the Rules. The shoot was simple. Just us, in the backyard, where it all started. Noah in his soft gray cardigan. Me in my apron, hands stained from fresh ranunculus. Our dog napping between us. They asked questions about our story, not just the wedding but the rejection, the rise, the decision to choose joy anyway. The article ran with this quote. We didn't fight to prove we were worthy. We built a life so beautiful, the proof spoke for itself. The week it was published, we were invited to a local wedding industry event as guest panelists. I almost didn't go, but something in me said, show up. For yourself. Halfway through the evening, between keynote speeches and artisan hors d'oeuvres, a distant cousin I hadn't seen since high school approached me. She smiled like nothing ever happened. Hey, Claire. I ran into your mom recently. She said you're still holding a grudge. I didn't flinch. I looked her in the eye and said, calm as anything. I'm not holding a grudge. I'm holding a boundary. She blinked. I smiled. It's lighter. Then I turned and walked back to Noah, who was showing someone a photo of the raised garden beds we'd just built. And in that moment I realized I hadn't just closed the RSVP to our wedding. I'd closed the RSVP to any room that required me to shrink just to be allowed in. And I had opened something far better. A life where I didn't need to be accepted to be celebrated. The lanterns were hung just the way they had been a year ago, glowing soft gold against the twilight, strung between trees that had grown a little taller since. The playlist was the same, too. Acoustic guitar, a little jazz, some indie love songs that Noah always hummed along to without realizing. It was our anniversary, and we were back where it all began, the backyard. But this time, it wasn't a wedding, just a small celebration, a thank you, a gathering of the people who had stood by us when the guest list shrank and the judgments grew. Maya brought a homemade pie. Noah's ments surprised him with a card they'd all signed in glitter pen. My Wild Bloom students came bearing bouquets they'd crafted themselves, messy, imperfect, breathtaking. It was loud in the best way. Laughter echoed off the fence. Someone spilled lemonade on a blanket. Our dog barked every time someone said cheers. It was nothing like the pristine parties I grew up attending. It was better. At one point, I stepped away from the crowd, just for a second, and found myself walking past the row of wooden chairs we'd set out under the string lights. One of them sat empty. Same spot it was last year. The seat I'd reserved for my mother. Back then, I'd kept it open out of hope. Out of habit. Out of some ache I couldn't name. Now it stayed empty because she never earned it back. I bent down, took a single blush rose from the vase on the table, and placed it gently on the seat. Then I whispered, just loud enough for the breeze to carry it. You chose absence.
And it was true.
She had chosen her pride over presence. Her image over intimacy. Her version of me over the real thing. And I had finally stopped trying to hand her a second chance she never asked for. I turned back to the party. To my husband, who was twirling a laughing 7-year-old under the lanterns. To the friends clinking mason jars. To the life we had built from nothing but care, time, and truth. I wasn't angry. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was free. They had been invited.
Once.
And they didn't show up. Now the world had seen what they missed. And I would never forget it. They thought our wedding was beneath them. They didn't realize they were walking out on the very thing everyone else wished they had.